1580 103.3 WPKY Coffee Talk is on the air. Morning conversations about things of interest to you. If you'd like to be a guest on Coffee Talk, just email us your information at WPKYonline@gmail.com. We're proud to call Caldwell County home. WPKY.
Merry Christmas!
103.3 WPKY. I don't know if you recognize any of those little voices or not, but those are actually kids that we had the opportunity to have in the studio. Now, the closer we get to Christmas, what we're going to be doing is those kids singing some Christmas songs and telling us what they want for Christmas. And you know what? You heard those last year. This year, we're not necessarily able to do that, but that's okay because we're going to replay it from last year. Hopefully, that'll bring some joy to everybody during Christmas time. So make sure that you join us for that. Speaking of join, we on the phone this morning. We've got a friend of the show in the station. Chris Joyner, how are you?
I'm doing great.
You know, I haven't talked to you since Veterans Day, but happy Veterans Day.
Well, thank you. I've been out. A lot of us have been out. I was out west with a lot of wildfires for quite a while. I think I was out for a total of 5 weeks. It was a little over 5 weeks, actually 5.5 weeks, at different times throughout the fall on wildfires out west. I was in Wyoming and Colorado twice, and a lot of our senior staff was out. The West was suffering a pretty extensive wildfire season, so a lot of us were out there, and I do appreciate the Happy Veterans Day. It was really nice. I got to spend it with my kids, and this was the first year in a while I was home for it, and really enjoyed that.
Well, you know, I will say, I think that's something that a lot of people probably don't even realize that goes on is the aid that you all give in other areas of the country, even with the wildfires. Can you shed a little more light on that? What that was all about?
Sure. So quite a few of us. So we get these additional skills of for all hazard incidents, and primarily for our agency is wildfires, where we learn how to operate in these fast evolving incidents, and to be able to form really quick teams, and that helps us back here in the event that, or not be an event, it is going to happen. Whenever we have a crisis event here, we can form those teams really quick and be able to provide services to the community really rapidly in a very cohesive manner. And so we go out there and the first wildfire was on. It turned out to be the largest wildfire in Colorado history for about a month. And then while I was out there on the second wildfire in Wyoming that spread into Colorado, the Cameron Peak fire surpassed that one. And then because of the East Troublesome fire in Colorado became a big problem, I was rerouted to that fire, and that one grew 125,000 acres in one night. I've never seen anything like it. None of us there had ever seen anything like it. I think there was one or two firefighters I talked to that had seen anything like that. And the clouds were on fire. It was pretty terrifying. We did have some fatalities with it. 300 homes were lost in that fire, and it was a big learning moment for me. I mean, I've been on a lot of wildfire, and I've never seen anything like that. And it helps us be stronger here when we do have events like that. And just because we haven't had a lot of wildfire here doesn't mean we won't. We do know wildfire has been an active part on our landscape through history, and we certainly have an opportunity for that to happen here. And so we do a lot of things like prescribed burning that mitigate some of those hazards, so we don't have fires to threaten things like the nature station, where we have captive animals that can't get out of there in a quick fashion. So we also have a lot of infrastructure there that if a wildfire took off, you could destroy. And then, of course, the most important is people. We tend to always put that last, but it is the absolute most important, I think, because it goes without saying a lot of times. But these campgrounds, if wildfire were to get started in one of those, could become a very dangerous situation. What we would consider a wildland-urban interface, where you got a lot of people and wildlands wooded areas, right where a lot of people are. So we think about all of those things, whether people realize it or not, and we plan for those types of evacuations. And for what I do in my normal job is public affairs, and so when I go on wildfire, I end up doing fire information, and where I'm doing there is providing information to the public in such a way that they can make informed decisions about their safety and evacuations and what the fire is doing, where the fire is going, what we're doing on the ground. I mean, these are multi-million-dollar operations where $1 million could easily be spent on it in one day, and the public has an absolute right and expectation to know what their money's being used for. And so a lot of times that's what my role is on those wildfires. But we have people, everything from sawyers to logisticians, everything in between that go on these fires, and we get these additional tasks. And through our careers, usually try to go on at least one wildfire a year, and you end up providing a lot of help to people that are in really devastating situations. And we only do it for usually 2 weeks at a time. I was gone for 3 weeks for one of those fires, and that's because these are 16-hour days where you're working 16 hours, and we have a regimented that you have to be off 8 hours. So it's a high intensity, high stress thing that, but you're providing a lot of help to people in a lot of need. So we look forward to it. It's one of the things that I've enjoyed. It's kind of filled that gap that when I left the military, I still felt like that need to serve, and that gives me that need.
Well, and that's the thing too, is I know we talk about fire preparedness, and some of that is talking to your kids, because when you think about it, we've got a lot of acres at LBL and in that area of wooded area. Thank goodness, because we all enjoy that. But when a fire gets going, it's a living, breathing thing. It can really engulf. And I know folks say, well, it's got some regenerative properties, when things do burn that way. But man, can it get out of control so quickly?
Sure. We want to see, when we see a fire on the landscape for the regenerative nature of it, a low intensity fire. And there's some types of trees and grasses that maybe we would want a higher intensity if it's an invasive plant, where we want to completely replace the seed bank. The high intensity burn is really good for those, but most of the time we do not want a high intensity burn. And most of the fires all the fires I was on except for the Pine Gulch fire, were beetle kill areas where we had large infestations of beetle that the mountain pine beetle that it killed literally thousands of contiguous acres of pine, lodgepole pine, and it's incredibly dangerous. You can't go in there. Not possible, because there's trees falling all the time. It's one of the more terrifying things to do. Tried hunting in one of those areas one time, and it was pretty terrifying because you could hear trees falling all over the place when the slightest little breeze. But when fire gets in there, we do not send firefighters in there. What best we can do is just get a containment. So that's why we're always really concerned about beetle infestations, because they can wipe out huge stands of similar trees very quickly. And that's a big concern for the Forest Service across the entire country.
Well, and I know folks say, what in the world could I possibly do to help anything at home? Because really, even a small scale, to what we think is small anyway, leaf burn can quickly become something very dangerous, even at home. You don't have to live in the middle of the forest or in the middle of Washington for it to be a dangerous situation very quickly if something happens. I've heard that, going around your house and picking up some of the dried limbs and getting rid of some of that stuff can really just make a difference in how safe or protection, I guess, for your property as far as fire.
Yes, and you said it perfectly. We call that defensible space. You want to create a defensible space. So when we're dealing with a wildfire that's approaching, we're looking for homes that have those defensible spaces where we can make a stand to try to save your property. And when we got a fire burning at literally miles an hour, we don't have a whole lot of time to make those assessments and those improvements. And like that Gatlinburg fire, how quickly it burned. When the firefighters are there, their number one priority is human life. And if it's still fast burning, but it's not to the point of where we're only looking at saving human life, we will try to save structures, and we want to see, those defensible spaces are the ones where we'll try to make a stand and try to protect their home. And you can help a lot by removing that debris around the house so that the fire doesn't have a bridge to reach over and get into your gutters and work its way up through leaf litter, which is a pretty common way it does it, or through the eaves or on the shingles and things like that. So you clear that away and create that defensible buffer that we can really anchor on. We're making those split-second decisions of can we even save this home? But absolutely important.
I'll tell you, I think I could talk to Chris just about every day and find something. We didn't plan on talking about that. It just...
Sure didn't.
Well, when you've got a well-rounded job, I mean, you do public affairs, but at the same time, when you work for the Forestry Service, that's it. That's all-encompassing in a lot of ways.
It is. And I, like you said, we didn't come talk about that. We came to talk about the home place. And, I've really studied this, what's happened over the past few days and the increased interest. I believe I probably heard either by call or by email probably every one of your listeners this week or their congressional representatives. And I've had some time to really reflect on where the message breakdown, and I accept a lot of responsibility with that. And I believe I can clear up a lot of confusion about things with coming on your show today. And as I thought about it, it really hit me that words matter. And I came from another agency that deals with a lot of land use planning and very extremely complicated land use planning. And so my goal when I talk to the public is try to simplify it, because the public's completely capable of understanding all of it, but do they have time to really invest all that attention on the details? And so a lot of times we will skip important factors just out of simplicity of being able to reach all people with the pertinent facts very quickly.
I want to hold on just a second. I want to remind everybody what we're talking about, just in case, because I want to clarify, is we're talking about the issues going on right now at the home place at LBL.
Yep. And so, and as I was saying that, and I didn't even clarify that, but I just figured everybody knew it.
I just wanted to make sure.
Fire, you think everybody knows. Just goes without saying. In my world this week, this has been the only thing. I have not eaten lunch. Yesterday was the first day I've eaten lunch all week, just because of this. But this is a small price. I mean, everybody's excited. We knew people cared a lot about the home place. I don't think any of us were surprised about that. But words matter. And so, when we're looking at simplicity, a lot of times people will interchange words. And I really spent a lot of thought on this, and I think a lot of this can really be broken down to that. So we went out a few years ago looking to the public and saying, hey, we want to develop a strategy called Sustainable Recreation and Environmental Education Strategy, where we want the public to tell us what's important to them to help us guide items that are in our decision space and items that are not outside, that are outside of our decision space, where we'll have to initiate a National Environmental Policy Act action. And there's no way I can say that to the public where it's going to be intriguing and easily to remember. I mean, it's a lot of government speak there. So we've simplified things, but that is what we're doing. Is we sought out the public to tell us how you want to advise us on how you want us to prioritize things on items that are within our decision space, and also direct to where we get to a point where we need to come back out for more public comment. So I'll explain that. So it really can be explained in a plan versus a strategy. So there's the National Environmental Policy Act that really encompasses all of this, but the National Forest Management Act, the Forest Lands and Federal Lands and Policy and Management Act, all guide how we do policy and environmental analysis for actions on the landscape. But there are things that are in our decision space. I mean, I think everybody can appreciate that if an employee of mine wants to take a day off tomorrow, I don't need to come back to the public and do a public round of input for that employee to take a day off. I mean, I don't think anybody would expect government to operate like that. So there are things that are in our decision space. But once we go out of that decision space, we have to execute that through usually an environmental assessment, or even if it's really big, an environmental impact statement. And so forests, every 20 years or so, they'll put together a forest management plan. And I know people have been interested in us having a forest management plan, a new forest management plan, a revised one. And then they see this recreation strategy come out, and I think there may have been a perception that we were doing that in lieu of the plan. The document that we released that showed it's basically like a conversation we had with the public, and we released it as, this is what we heard from you, okay, and this will guide items in our decision space and guide us to points where we will have to go back out to the public. So for the home place, what that means, what would be in our decision space is how we deliver programs, how we deliver environmental education programs to the public is absolutely within the decision space of the U.S. Forest Service. To stop providing environmental education and close the home place would, I feel pretty confident, would require some type of NEPA action, a pretty extensive opportunity for the public to provide official input that would be a very regimented, very legal process. And so when we say we created this strategy, that shows that basically is a conversation between the public and us about how you want us to get to where we need to be. So we heard from the public different things about that. They wanted us to prioritize in other areas, okay? And so for us to do that, something has to be impacted by that. And the reason why is because we've got all this infrastructure that was built in the late 70s and 80s, and TVA came in and built all this infrastructure. And if you have a house that was built in the 70s and 80s, you can imagine that your HVAC has already been replaced. Your heat pump has been replaced. But there was that time there for about 10 or 15 years where you really didn't have a whole lot of those things breaking down, and things seemed really great. And if you're looking on the outside, the management of it looks brilliant. And then when those things start falling apart, you know, looking from the outside, you don't maybe not understand, well, gee, wow, you do have a lot of things that have to be worked on. And that's where we're at across the entire unit. So we're looking at all of those things. And then when we look at the home place, the taxpayers were spending $420,000 for the operation of the home place. That was $408,000 out of $626 locally, and then $12,000 was picked up on the national level for utilities, and our revenue was $117,341. So, as good stewards of taxpayer money, and that's a concern. And so we've been very interested working with our not-for-profit partners and expanding our visitation and expanding interest in the programs. And as you look at it, it's pretty static. Outside of the big eclipse year and COVID, we're going to just take that one out. Those 2 years, if you take outside of that, it's pretty static in the mid-30s. The problem is, and I got to give a lot of credit to Judge White. He and I were talking about this issue earlier in the week in my report to him that I tried to do quarterly. And Judge White picked up very astutely, well, I mean, your visitation seems to be pretty stable. And the outlier of that is the age of our visitation continues to increase. And it was reflected in the calls I was getting. I was getting a lot of people calling saying, hey, you can't close the home place. My granddaddy used to take me there. You can't take away the home place. I used to go there as a student in school, and then my question would be, well, when was the last time you went there? Well, it was 20 years ago. And that seemed to be very consistent with our data in that most of the age of visitation here is under 16 and over 60. That for Land Between the Lakes, that is our primary visitation. And if we don't grow these programs, we are very worried about where they're going. We're trying to look down the road to say what we can afford later, and a static visitation now is not going to be representative of a long-term trend. And so we need to grow that. And we feel like the best way to grow that is to bring in new and different partnerships. There's most forests and national parks that have non-for-profit partners have multiple different ones, and I think where we failed at is probably through the years we didn't diversify that, and we relied on one single nonprofit partner, Friends of Land Between the Lakes, and we really need a diverse group there of different not-for-profit organizations to help us out and help us get to where we need to be. And we have some concerns with diversity. Our numbers are showing 97% white and 95% white, depending on which of our last two visitor use surveys done. And we're not reaching a diverse crowd, and we're reaching a very old and very young crowd. We're not hitting any of those other demographics, and that's very concerning to us. And it's not showing us that we're bringing a representative product to the public. And so what we did, if you can imagine, I think the perfect analogy is you're sitting at your dinner table and you're having this discussion with your family, and you said, hey, what can we do to improve the outside of our house? And my wife says, we need to build a deck, and I hear a knock at the door, and I go to the door, and it's the building department wanting to know why I didn't submit a building permit. That's similar to what we're dealing with here, is we've essentially said, well, this is where we believe we have to go with this, and then we got the call at the door that we need that building permit. Essentially, as an analogy, I think that's probably not a perfect analogy. It was much better when I worked it in my head last night talking to my wife about it. But incidentally, we already have a deck, and we did get a permit. But I think that's a pretty accurate one, because there's no decision. If people listen to all of my ramblings and are bored with it and still angry with the federal government, I completely understand. Our history absolutely does not afford us the opportunity for the benefit of the doubt. If you remember anything, is that what we released recently with our strategy is not a decision document. A decision document is something very different. And so this is just, I think, the results of a conversation where we are wanting the public to tell us how you want your place to look. And we've compiled all that over a series of conversations, be it online and meetings, public meetings. And we legitimately want to have that more interaction. And I don't know that in my section, and ultimately me, did a great job of explaining that to the public when we were doing the in-person meetings of what we were trying to do. But that is ultimately what we were trying to do, is have that conversation and find out where we need to get to. And I think that while it has been a painful week, I think one day this week I either talked to or emailed 5 different congressionals, and it would have been 6, but Senator Alexander in Tennessee retired, and Senator Haggerty hasn't come on board yet. So that was the only one that I didn't speak to for on the federal level or exchange an email with this past week. I would tell your listeners that your federal representatives absolutely have heard you, and they've reached out to me, and I do feel like we are in a really good spot. We have met with we do have at least 2 nonprofit or government entities that are interested in partnering with us for the home place, and we feel extremely good about where we're at with it. We haven't sent out any news release. Again, if you go back to that analogy about sitting at the coffee table at your house, having a conversation about your yard and coming up with a deck, that's kind of where we're at, is that there's no decision been made. And so I completely understand our history does not afford us a lot of leeway with the public and doesn't afford us any trust. I absolutely get that. And I suspect that has a lot of the roots about why people are as upset as they are, is because maybe they feel like some of the history is happening all over again, that the government's going to do what it's going to do. That's not it at all. And we absolutely are, we're pretty optimistic that we have a way forward that we can keep the home place in the same operation, if not better. I fully believe, and I truly mean this, that I think the home place is going to come out of this better. And people just got to have patience. And I know that's probably not going to happen just based on our history.
Well, and I mean, I got to ask now, when you talk about the document, are we talking about the letter that was shared that supposedly went to the Friends of LBL?
So the Friends of LBL, I can't speak for them. I know they sent out an email. I'm sure you're referring to that. We have, they've been our principal partner for several years, and we've discussed our challenges with the home place for several years. I mean, it's been something that has been discussed ad nauseum. I mean, literally dozens of times we have discussed our challenges with the home place. And it is certainly not lost on anybody that works there. Every single person that's come on board with my staff, one of the questions they get, in fact, it is the only written question they get before they get hired, is you need to provide a out-of-the-box sample of a strategy that you will employ to generate new interest in the home place, specifically the home place, because that's how important it is. It's important to all the staff members. It's something we've made very clear with our not-for-profit partners, and we feel like what we need is some additional partners. Friends of Land Between Lakes I'm sure will continue to be a partner for ours. They do an excellent job at the nature station and the Bugle Corps out at the Elk and Bison Prairie and multiple other areas. At the home place, we haven't seen the growth that we need to see in the environmental education programs. We need to have some new energy there, and so we're looking at that. And I feel extremely optimistic about where we are with it. And I know that patience is what we need from the public right now. But what I really want from the public is when we open the doors, it's for people to come out. I mean, it's pretty disappointing when I got so many angry calls, and then I'll ask them, well, when was the last time you were there? And a lot of them started that with a 1990 or something.
Right.
And I mean that's a concern of ours. And we are trying to stimulate the region. Ideally, that means bringing in new dollars from outside of the immediate area. But it is a reflection if we locally view it as that stale place. And I ask people, well, why haven't you gone? And well, I don't know about the programs. Are there aren't enough programs? And that kind of highlights our concerns, is that we need some additional help in helping us get more information and new and different ways to the public that's visiting, that's wanting new and different ways of learning. And we feel like we have some pretty good options coming forward, and I think they're going to be revealed pretty quickly.
Well, if nothing else, there has to be something good that comes out of it, Chris, because maybe if nothing else, people see how passionate they are about the home place. Maybe that's kind of brought that to light.
Tess, that's a great thing, that you said that. I mean, I've been optimistic, and normally I'm the sky's falling guy in my office. People joke about that. But I've been incredibly optimistic since day one on this. When I first talked to Mayor Brandon about it, he is the county executive for Stewart County, on November 19th. And he expressed immediate interest in Stewart County being an active partner with us. And we are incredibly encouraged by that and are very excited about any type of role they want to take in this. And so, I mean, I think there's a lot of really great things that have come out of there. But you said it right. I think maybe just reminding people that we're there and getting them to come out. And it's not about. We know we are never going to have dollar for dollar recovery, but we've got to be good stewards of taxpayer money. I'm a taxpayer too, and when I look at the amount of money that we're investing in this, and we're not growing that, and we have a age class and a demographic that's very stale and is absolutely going to shrink over time. That's very concerning, because once they hit that 70 mark, our visitation drops off sharply. If for some reason, and I don't know why, our visitor numbers go really low really quick once we cross 70. And so we're trying to make sure, and like right now I'm looking at it as 3.5 of the visitors, 3.5%. So it drops from a height of 13.4 from 60 to 69 to 3.5. So there's this marked cutoff. And as I'm looking through the years of us doing this visitor use surveys, you can track the years. You can literally watch it move from one class to the next, where it's literally the people that were visiting in the 90s. Okay, now they've reached 40. Okay, now they've reached 50. Okay, now they've reached 60. And you can see it cross like that through these tables we've got, and that is incredibly concerning, because we know based on history that once they hit 70, it drops to 3.5. We do have one that it went up to 8.7.
In their 60s, they bring their grandkids. That's what they're doing.
Is that, you know what, you said it there, because at the same year that we got 60 to 69 at 13.4, under 16 was 24.4. So it's the two far ends of that bracket. But the high end of that bracket, you can watch it go from 50 to 59 was the larger bracket. The previous one, I mean, it just keeps on getting older, and it starts painting that picture that, oh no, we're headed to a very big problem.
Right.
All the while, we have this dated infrastructure that is starting to fail. I mean, just this past weekend, we had $12,000 of damage to water pipes at Hillman Ferry. I mean, those are types of things that are happen daily. And the last thing I will tell you, and I know we're running close on the end of time, is if you're over at Lamb Twin Lakes, check out the new bridge that we just built at the home place. We just spent $150,000 on a brand new bridge on there. So if anybody has any doubts about our intent for the future of the home place, we literally, when I say just built, yesterday it was turned over to the U.S. Forest Service, literally yesterday. And we closed a little early this year for the bridge being built. That should give your listeners a pretty good indication of what we expect for the future of the home place. Right. We invested $150,000 in a brand new bridge, and it's a great looking bridge too.
Is there plans to shut down the home place?
There is no plans to shut down the home place.
I wanted to make sure I had that statement. Say that statement again, Chris Joyner.
Yeah, I will say that again. There is no plans to shut down the home place. And I could say it in all of the legalese that I needed to go back and say it. These really complicated ones are so frustrating, because it's almost impossible to explain in such a short term, but you're right. Yes, I will say it again. You can use this clip anywhere you want to. There is no plans to shut down the home place.
That sounds like a good old Christmas present with a bow on it right there.
Yes. Go check out our new $150,000 bridge we just finished building literally yesterday. I mean, that should tell you. If you don't want to you don't trust me because of our history, I get it. Go look at our brand new bridge. So that should tell you all you need to know.
You know what? It took some guts to get on and say, you know what? I'm gonna tell everything, and I'm gonna get all the misinformation out. That took some guts, mister, and I appreciate that. If you have updates on that, please let us know.
I will. I think we're going to see some movement pretty quickly. We are not at all interested in sitting on this situation. I can tell you, like I said, people have called their congressional representatives for sure, and And like I said, I would have been 6 if Haggerty, Senator Haggerty, was was not just the senator elect. I'm sure we probably would have heard from him as well. So, I mean, people are interested in this, and I will tell you, your elected representatives, if it's on a judge level, on the county executive, or it's at the federal level, have certainly reached out to us, and we know how you feel. I think we knew already, and I think we're in a really good. I feel very optimistic about it, and I think people, if they could give us just a little bit of patience, and when I say patience, I'm literally talking in its single digits days, like literally 10 days. I think that they're going to be very happy where we're headed.